Yeah, so Trish, thank you very much for coming through. So you're actually the first one in our series of Meet the Legends. Yeah, and it's
It's an
really good.
honor.
Yeah, it's good to see you. Yeah, so tell us about your early years.
In my early years, I had a totally different career
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't going anywhere. So I went back to school and started taking classes in botany and decided that ethnobotany, I interviewed a lot of people at different universities to decide, did I want nutrition? Did I want biochemistry? What was it that I wanted? And I went and spoke to some folks in the graduate department at Cornell, and they said, "Oh, you definitely want to do ethnobotany." And
Mm-hmm.
so I came back and figured out where I could go. And Robert By was a professor along with Dr. Rogers at the University of Colorado in Boulder, which was, within my home state here that I live in. And so it was an easy transition to go up there and get a master's degree. And then they didn't have a formal ethnobotany degree, very few places do, but it had a person who taught classes that I was interested in. And the University of Colorado has an interesting master's option called Masters of Basic Science, which is perfect for ethnobotany because you have to take different classes. So I could choose to take chemistry, biochemistry, anthropology, things that made up the multidisciplinary discipline of ethnobotany. So it worked perfectly for me.
Okay, that's fine. But who is Trish Flaster?
Oh, you want to know since my birth or what?
No, whatever you want to share with us, because I mean the audience might not know who Trish Flaster is, why you're such a legend.
I'm not sure I know why I'm a legend either, but I do
Yeah.
think that as an ethnobotanist, there aren't many of us in the natural products industry.
Mhm.
And the part of ethnobotany that I really like is working with the community and working with people.
Mhm.
And the other part, and why I was not an academician but in the industry, was I herbs to me, or medicinal plants, are really magical, and I was fascinated on how they work. And I thought when I went into school that we knew that, and we do not.
Yeah.
So those of you out there that think all the answers are in academia, that's not true. So I went, after I graduated, I worked at Celestial Seasonings. And the best thing about that was I learned quality control. And to have that as a basis of my career has been so valuable in every aspect of my business. And then I worked for Shaman Pharmaceuticals doing rainforest exploration, which was very, very exciting.
Yeah.
And then when I went out on my own as a consultant, it was obvious to me some areas of weakness in the natural products industry where I could focus, and that was in quality control, in reference materials, because people were not identifying the plant materials they were using, and there were problems with adulteration and economic, as well as dangerous things that were being substituted without anyone's knowledge. It wasn't a vindictive activity where people didn't identify their materials. They just didn't know. There aren't that many botanists in the natural products industry. So in that case, I became a legend by being a pioneer, by
Okay.
looking forward into using science in the aspect of botany and science in the sense of sustainable supply systems. And I've really worked hard in those areas, and I am leaving a legacy of those things, I believe. And
Yeah,
now I had a friend call me yesterday. He had an FDA inspection And the three top comments that the FDA said, this is of course American, is that they wanted better identification. And he does do already voucher specimens, but I was very excited to see that because that was never, ever on the list of FDA inspection. So this is a huge move for us who have been pioneering this, and the same with sustainability and really having people look at the climate chaos and how that can be thought of and included, and when they plan for their supply, how to work ethically with people in the field, how to use ethical standards when discovery is part of the process of new ingredients, all of these things, and been writing formats and guidelines to these things, ethical and environmental guidelines.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe let's go back a little bit. Tell me about your adventures with Celestial Tea, because I know
So,
you had lots of adventures all over.
well, it was good because it's mostly sensory evaluation, but there wasn't the framework around that made it analytical enough to be valid. And so by creating a framework, actually sensory evaluation is accepted by FDA now. And that took a lot of pushing from me into the industry after I left Celestial, but we taste it, we look at it, we do all sorts of inspections. We know those plants, but how did we prove it? And so I set up a herbarium there. And also what was interesting was a seed herbarium, because Celestial Seasonings is a premier herbal importer and was one of the largest importers for a long time. And so we had all raw materials coming and we did our own cleaning. And that was an advantage because we knew what we were getting. We did our own cleaning and our own cutting. So things came in whole, but it came in sometimes with Abies precarius, which is phytolectin, which is fatal. It came in with somebody's lunch that might have had a pharmaceutical. It came in with animal parts. It came in like somebody's ceiling dropped on it. I mean, there was all sorts of quality control that Celestial could clean and then make sure we knew what our product was. That was really valuable. And so I set up a seed herbarium and other things because we were getting in all sorts of things. And I used the USDA quite a bit to help me identify these materials to find out if they were dangerous or not. So that was the first step that I did in the industry and was one of the only herbaria at the time. I think there was one other and that was
all
it.
of these kind of pointed to your GACP weaknesses in your supply chain, right?
Yeah, because GACP was not formalized until 2006 when I helped American Herbal Products write that. And then it's been updated a couple times. But, WHO had it, but it wasn't thorough enough for the natural products industry.
Okay.
So people looking for good GACP should look at the American Herbal Products Association online. It's available and it's much better. And as I said, it's been improved more than once. So,
and that's very important, that point. Then Shaman, tell me about Shaman, because I read about it back in one of those conference proceedings when I was quite young, and it really stuck with me. And all these years, I mean, I think every time I met you, I would ask about
right. I'm
Shaman, where are they? What happened to them?
Well, I want to say one more thing about Celestial Seasonings. Excuse me for interrupting.
No, it's fine. Yeah.
One thing that was really valuable was that I worked in the analytical lab within the company, and people didn't know what that meant because they were marketing and sales and manufacturing. And so it was really valuable that we created classes. And so I brought in microscopes from a local high school, and we brought in all the people who handled the material. So all the cleaning and cutting, manufacturing people came in, and they looked at these plants and they learned their folk history, and they could look under a scope and you can look at the part of the chamomile that you're using, for example, or you can see the oil glands on mint. And that helped fill in my herbarium because all of a sudden they brought everything to the lab. And so it was a huge advantage for people to really feel part of the product. So I want to encourage people who have raw material supply to educate and have all their employees participate.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, but I thought that was also an
No, it's
important
an
thing
important point. Yeah.
that we did there.
Mm-hmm.
And then we at Shaman was a unique place, especially for ethnobotanists. Everybody wanted
When
to
were
be
they
there.
founded?
I started in 93 and they had already been going. I can't remember that if it was
Yeah.
86, I want to say, but I don't
Mm-hmm.
really know. But like there were
Yeah.
30 something people when I joined in 1993.
Okay.
And Dr. Schultes had been one of the key people in speaking with the president to develop this type of company using rainforest exploration to identify lead products for pharmaceuticals.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a whole host of ethnobotanists and premier scientists, natural products chemists, who were part of our elite scientific advisory team. And it was very exciting because these people were the people who would guide us. And so we started going out into the field, and our field work was very unique as well, where we always had a botanist and a medical person going together. So we could identify the plants, but we could also identify the diseases through the symptomology that they were expressing when we asked them. And what we did was to approach different language barriers. We often had images. In particular, we brought images of the diseases for which we were looking for. We were doing antivirals, antifungals, and ultimately for diabetes. And so there were some skin ailments that we could show. And it was really interesting because most of the images we have were on white skin. And we realized a lot of our work was not in those countries, but in South America and Africa and Asia. So we then got different images that we brought. And then when we were talking about posology or when to take this, when we were getting that kind of advice, we also draw pictures of, where the sun was in the sky to understand that we were, what time of day.
Yes. Okay.
The other extremely important part was that we, more than anyone, made sure that we always had prior informed consent formulas before we went, documents before we went in, and we always met with the chief or the head of the people way in advance of going there. But then when we were on the ground, we would meet with them and then ask permission, and then what we could do for reciprocity, immediate reciprocity, medium length reciprocity, which often was supply, and then long-term reciprocity, which was if indeed it ever made it to
royalty,
be a pharmaceutical, which is, very, very difficult, So we worked on projects we worked on those issues because we wanted to share profits equally. And, there are various pantropical medicinals that everyone uses. And so we didn't want to highlight one group over another. And so we thought that then we would, in return, when we had a product, we would return it equally to those people with whom we worked, not necessarily if it was their discovery. So that was, we were setting a lot of guidelines for people doing this kind of work.
Yeah. And then what successes did you have? What were the highlights of the,
I would say it was minimum. I mean, we had started with Michael Tempesta, and two of his students at the University of Missouri in Columbia had identified the Croton lecleri from the beginning. And that was the one product so far that has reached FDA. I don't know if there's anything else current, but that is the one that they've used more than anything. We certainly have had successes in different ways that, like I have been expressing, in setting those groundwork for how to do field work and work with local people, and what type of reciprocities and respect we can show to the knowledge holders that often is not done. It's been it was used to be called biopiracy, and that's not what we were doing. So that was really important. So those successes are in creating systems that were functional, and how to talk about disease entities in the field. Like we would want to talk about diabetes, and one of the things about diabetes is that there's sugar in your urine. And so a lot of the remote healers would say, how would you know? Because you pee in a box, meaning a bathroom, where they can see if ants come to, urine when people are out in the field, or, in the local, in the forest. And so there was a lot of communication development. I think that was really extremely valuable for everyone on both sides. And there were times where people went, I don't want to share my knowledge. And that was informative to us, because we, as North Americans, think that we can dictate that, or that everyone wants to work with us. And, it isn't the case. So, it was helpful for us to learn that, and be humbled by many of these people.
Oh, okay. So that's great then. Maybe let me go back to your younger self, in the career that you've had. What would you tell your younger self? A 20-year-old Trish, about the career that you've had.
I always wanted to teach, and that was my first degree. I always wanted to do that from being very young, and during my play and everything, we would act that out. And I am really glad that I did that, but it wasn't for me intellectually satisfying like ethnobotany is, and it's satisfying in a lot of other ways. Believe me, I'm not undermining what teaching does. You know that, and but I think one of the valuable things is that you can change your careers. If something starts to dull, or the politics don't allow you to grow, figure out what your passion is and then move towards that. It's not such a struggle to go back and do some classes. Now, when I taught for Bastyr College, which is a homeopathic university, I realized that I could have been a very good homeopathic doctor, naturopathic doctor. But at that time, I can't remember exactly when that was. I was in late 50s or 60. And it was just like, by the time I would graduate and get a practice, I felt like I was going to want to retire.
You're really too old.
Right. And that's only one of the few regrets I have. But that's a very different lifestyle than going into the field and working with plants. You're working with plants in a very different way. So I'm very satisfied with what I'm doing. But that was one thing I thought,
but you can still teach, right? Because I think we've tried to do training, on the webinars. For me, I find that much more satisfying, because you're kind of teaching to people who are interested.
Right. No, I've done a lot of teaching and writing and interviews that have been enjoyable. But I really did enjoy those students. They were very knowledgeable and helped me just learn what they needed, and the most important thing one student told me one time was the 20-minute sessions I had each class that I taught, that during that semester, was the session I offered on jobs, because students are at a loss when they leave and get a degree. Now, if you get a degree that has a very clear guideline on, you're a doctor or something, fine. But so many didn't know where to even apply. And that's been true with ethnobotanists. Though when I attend the Society for Economic Botany, I often teach we have Teaching Tuesdays, and I do a workshop on non-academic jobs, because so many just think it's only academic, and there's lots of students out there that want to do other things. And so we have a cohort of colleagues that come and present with me on how they've expanded the academic program or have done something totally different.
Yeah, and employability as well, just preparing them to be employed. I think that's very important. Yeah, that's something that maybe we should do too. Okay, we're coming to the end, so I'm just going to ask you, so what do you do for fun?
I'd say probably two categories. I read a lot of novels, not
Okay.
a lot of some nonfiction, but a lot of novels. I like historical novels, so I'm always reading a novel.
Historical
And
novels. Okay.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. So, and most other forms of fun are physical for me. I ski, I hike, I
Hmm.
swim, I
Yeah.
garden.
Okay.
I really like that. My mother was a physical education professor, so I had no
Oh,
choice when I was younger.
yeah.
But I like it, and it feels good for me, to stay fit. It has helped me in a lot of ways to maintain my health. And so I encourage everyone
Yeah.
to at least take a short walk every day,
Mm.
something like that. So I do that. And, socialization with friends is always fun. So I go to
That's great.
concerts here and there, but mostly those are the things that I'll do. And when I do hike, it is often with friends. So,
Okay.
or
Well, I'm
skiing.
kind of hoping that you come and visit us again.
That would be great. That
Yeah.
would be great.
Yeah. That's it. And then when you say historical novels, I mean, what sort of stuff is that? I've read like the pharaohs and the sort
No,
of
there's
fictional emperors and yeah.
It's mostly novels, and
Yeah.
certainly I like reading novels where there's a cultural aspect, so
Okay.
some books by Isabel Allende or books that occur in different cultures, so I'm learning about different
Yeah.
cultures. But
Mm.
historical novels are often, they include history,
Yeah.
but it's a novel.
The
So,
element
sometimes I have
of
to remind myself, oh, I'm not reading a nonfiction. That's not,
yeah.
So, but it has that part of history that, you look at how you might interpret things
Yeah.
and how that has changed civilizations, that
Yeah.
interpretation and application. So those are fun, but it's not limited to that at
Yeah.
all.
No,
I
I
read
understand. Yeah.
science fiction
Yeah.
and all sorts of stuff, but I definitely love books that have biology, botany, and some
Mm.
kind of culture. So
So
it
you're
blends
always attracted
perfectly.
to plants. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just read a book called A Thousand Folded Birds or Paper Birds, I think it's called, by Tor
Yeah.
Udall. It's a real
Okay.
different kind of book. I can't tell if I totally liked it or not, but
Yeah.
most of it took place at Kew Gardens. And
Oh
so it was
wow.
fascinating because it talked about the pagoda and the
Yeah.
temperate house and the palm house and the sequoias. And
Mm.
it was really amazing because it had nothing to do with plants in a lot of ways, but it was the setting for people discovering differences in time and relationships and things.
Yeah.
So it's really fascinating.
Yeah. I'm actually not too far from the Kew Gardens at the moment, so maybe
Hmm.
if I get a chance, yeah. Um.
Let me know. I know some folks there that can maybe give you a
Okay.
back end
Uh,
tour, right?
yeah. That'd be good. Yeah. Um. Okay. Last words of wisdom.
I think you have to enjoy life. I
Hmm.
think you need to um, really be compassionate and generous, a lot of gratitude in life. I think um, that makes a difference in appreciation of things you do and appreciation of you and how you move forward. Sorry, my nose is itchy.
Yeah. No, it's fine.
I think those are things that are most important, and that creates a family. So, I have a biological family, and I have
Hmm.
an academic family, and I
Hmm.
have a ethnobotany family, I have a natural products family, and those are all make my life enjoyable.
Yeah.
So, I think really relating well to people with generosity and compassion is really such an important lesson in life.
Yeah. And those are words from our legend. So thank you very much, Trish. And be well. Okay.
Always a pleasure to speak with you.